This whole procedure is for the 5MO cylinder head. You can find the stamping next to the exhaust port on the left side. Hello everybody, I'm inside now. It's much cooler. As you know, I removed the cylinder head and the lower intake manifold is one unit. Now to remove the lower intake manifold, there's four 12mm nuts on the top and four 12mm bolts on the bottom. Next, what I want to do is I need to figure out if the cylinder head's warped, and I have a straight edge and a feeler gauge to check that. But when I turn it upside down, the bucket tappets are going to fall out. So first I'm going to clean those, the top of them, and then mark on them which position the bucket tappets came from. The gasket set I purchased also has 16 new valve guide seals, which I'm also going to replace the valve guide seals because I'm sure that the if the rubber on the spark plug tube seals is dried and cracked, they're probably not much. They're probably, well, they're in oil, so they're probably not as dried out, but they're probably getting close to it. This will be a little bit of a challenge with the housing for the bucket tappets because it makes the whole valve assembly recessed. So what you want to do is, after taking off all the nuts and the bolts, you don't want to hit the fuel rail. You don't want to hit the fuel rail. Hit one of the supports, and that will start to separate the head. You can use a magnetic pickup to remove the bucket tappets, and as with all valve train components, you want to label them so they're all reassembled in the same location. The shim on the bucket tappet is a way that the clearance between the cam and the bucket can be adjusted. Nissan sells different size ones, and they can be removed as easily with a magnet, or sometimes they need to be slightly pried. I think oil gets in there and it creates like a vacuum. Tappet clearance is adjusted by using different size shims. Nissan has a special tool that you can remove the shims and insert new shims while the cams are still in the cylinder head. And I'm sure you can probably come up with a homemade tool, but they do have a tool if you want to buy that. Here's my valve spring compressor. And this part here, I have a bigger one. This one snaps. It just snaps on there. And I have a bigger one, but I think, I look for it, I can't find it. I don't know where it is. It's around here somewhere. But I don't think I need it. I think that's for like like big block Chevys and stuff. This smaller one should be fine. So what this does is the other end goes around. And it should be on the valve. And then this end goes on the top of the valve. See, it's pressing the spring down, and it says collets. That's what keeps the valve in there. Keeps the spring on there. There's both of the collets removed. There's the seal. Taking the valve out, there's very little play in the valve. This is a view of the valve spring compressor at work. So this one end goes on the valve you're removing, and the other one goes and it's pressing the spring down. The collets is something that's magnetized, like a screwdriver. You can magnetize a screwdriver, or if you can get like this, I can get that in there sometimes and remove them. I labeled all the bucket tappets with a Sharpie marker so they'll be installed in the correct location. This is the IVT, or the intake valve timing control. It's utilized to control the intake valve opening and closing timing, engine coolant temperature, signals, engine speed, the amount of air intake, vehicle speed, and throttle position are used to determine intake valve timing. The intake camshaft sprocket position is regulated by oil pressure, controlled by the IVT, or the intake valve timing control. When the ECM sends a signal, the oil pressure is transmitted to the camshaft sprocket through the channel in the camshaft. Then the intake camshaft is advanced. The IVT only functions when the engine coolant temperature is between 59 degrees and 230 degrees Fahrenheit, and the engine speed is between 1,100 RPM and 4,200 RPM, or during a high engine load. The IVT is a solenoid, and it kind of looks like a pressure control solenoid or a torque converter clutch solenoid on a GM 4T65E transmission. The IVT was 27 millimeters. This is the IVT solenoid removed, and notice on the screen it's got like little black flecks all over it. More than likely that's the decomposing spark plug tube seals that are dried out and they just crumbled. This Sentra has two coolant temperature sensors. They both work off of thermistors, where the temperature coefficient of the resistance is that as the temperature increases, the resistance increases on the sensor. And there's a 2-wire and a single wire, and the 2-wire is for the ECM to make calculations for the engine management system, and the 1-wire just runs the temperature gauge. It's in the in-dash temperature gauge. Here's what both of the coolant temperature sensors look like removed from the cylinder head. So this one was like 12 millimeter. I think this one was like 19 millimeter. So for this one, I have to get the repair. The sensor's good. It's just that the the pigtail that plugs into that, the prior owner broke it. Here's the new repair part that I got on eBay. So when I put this back together, everyone has new head bolts, right? You all got new head bolts, right? I'm not hearing a lot of yeses. I hear a lot of no's. There's a whole bunch of debris. See on the right there? That's all from the seals on the spark plug tubes. They dried out. They weren't rubbery anymore. They were like hard plastic, and they're crumbling, and that's what's happening. So if you've got an older or old Nissan with spark plug tubes, you want to probably get a new valve cover. Oh yeah, I got the seals in that I ordered. They won't fit the modification on the valve cover I made, so I'll have to order a new valve cover. And they're only $40 at Rock Auto, $46 or something like that. At least they have them in stock. I looked probably about this time last year, and they didn't have any. You want to make sure you get the washers out of the head for the head bolts. They'll stay in there. The oil will keep them in there. And then I also have this straight edge that I'm going to use to see if this head's warped or not. So I check like this, and across like that, and like this, and all the way down to the end like that. And there's no, there's no daylight. and I can't the 4 thousandths 4 thousandths of an inch feeler gauge won't, I can't insert it underneath there. Make sure all the oil galleyways are clear. Make sure to wear safety glasses when you're using any kind of cleaner or anything. I mean, this whole process, you should be wearing safety glasses, but especially when using carburetor cleaner to clean out passageways. The passageway may be blocked, or it may be a bolt hole, or it may be just the way it's manufactured. But if you squirt carburetor cleaner and something that's a dead end, it's going to come back out the same force it's going in, and it's going to hit you right in the face. So make sure you have safety glasses. That that bearing that clamps on here, that's got a channel that goes through here. Remember, there was you can see the oil mark that went across here, and that leaves both sides of these. Also do this and see all the water coming out of the bearings. Some of them coming out, but you can go to those and do the, you can see water coming out of the other one, so it's not plugged or anything. You can also do you can put it on the chain tensioner. See water coming out the bearings. Probably follow that with you know, compressed air, dried out real good. So this is this is the old chain tensioner, and so to lock it, what you do is you push it all the way in like that, and then stick something in there. Like that. What it does is it goes into that groove around the outside, and then you install this back on the motor, and you pull that out, and it doesn't supposed to shoot out like that, but you got the cam chain there, the tensioner, and that'll keep it from going flying out like that. So I was drying off the head after I cleaned it, and this dropped out. And I was thinking, what the heck is this? Where did it come from? I mean, that's the worst thing in the world, is to try to, you have something fall out and you don't know where it is, where it came from, how important it is. Whether a friend of yours dropped it in there just to see if you could figure out that it didn't belong to it. I don't know. So you have to play detective sometimes, and then I remembered, I heard it bouncing around inside the cylinder head before it fell out. So I started looking around, and what it is it goes around. See, it goes right around the valve guide. So there's like a little bit of a recess of aluminum. Okay, they've all been removed, and I wanted to do that so I make sure I got them all back. It's kind of difficult to see in there, and it's difficult to really try to figure out if there's a washer in there or not. So so if I remove them all, then they should I can put them back one at a time, and I'll know that they all have received one. So there should be 4 times 4 is 16, right? So there should be 16 of them. So I have all 16. And, you know, when the one fell out, I was going around looking at, you know, like all the... Here are the new valve guide seals. There's 16 of them. And I'm going to go ahead and start taking the old valve guide seals off. So this is what I used to remove the first valve guide, and it's a pair of needle nose vice grips. And as you can see, the outside of the valve guide is metal, so they're a little different than most of the other valve guides, but they will come off. Valve guide seals. And they're not real rubbery anymore. The rubber is starting to, it's starting to get like the spark plug tube seals. It's starting to dry out. So it's probably good I'm replacing these. So the best way I found to do this is to while this is on the valve guide, you want to put this on like this. And then you want to adjust the end of the vice grip, this part here, and you want to back it off so you can just squeeze it. You don't want to squeeze it too tight, because if you squeeze it too tight, you're going to be forcing it against the guide. You just want it enough so you can get a good tight grip on it. You don't want to crush it. And then once you do that, so once you get it locked on, you just start twisting it back and forth and pulling up. If you just pull up, for some reason it won't come out. If you twist it back and forth, it's like I'm pulling a tooth. It actually gets a little bit easier as you do a couple, as you get a like a routine on how to do it, which is pretty much the same with anything. If you just go at it without even thinking about it, it usually isn't as good as... Oh, one thing you have to be careful of when you do that is you don't want to... Oh yeah, you don't want to... See the... What happens is the buckets go down in these... I don't... You know, you have to want to make sure you don't scratch them up. You know, when you're bringing out the, you don't want to scar these up. So you have to be careful. I think they might have a, let's see if I don't know if this is such a good idea doing it this way, because it does, it may mar the top, you know, with this part of the, when I'm twisting it, may mar the surface for the bucket. Let me think about this. Okay, I found another way will cause the least zero to the least amount of damage to the surface for the bucket. So what I do is I have this long pair of needle nose pliers with like a 90-degree, and you just go in carefully, get as close to the bottom as possible, and then you just twist. There. And they are drying out. The rubber in there is it's next to dried out. So it'd be a shame to put a new head gasket on there and do all this work, and then I mean, this wasn't using any oil at all. I was really surprised it didn't use any oil. I mean, I'd do an oil change, and I don't think the whole time I changed the oil, I never had to top the oil off. And you don't want to have your face right over when you're doing this. You don't want to hit yourself in the face. And like I said, you know, you want to try to get like the bottom of the valve seal. that's the key, is to get it far, try to get underneath where it's near the bottom, because if you get near the top, what you're going to do is you run the risk of forcing this against the guide, and then you're working against friction also. Oh yeah. See, there it is. It's just that easy. Oh, that one came out really easy. I think if you get it down by the bottom, it works. With minimal scuffing of the bucket tappets. Seems what works the best is to grab it and start twisting, and then just keep going back down a little bit further and twisting, pulling up, and then a little bit further down. It seems to work best. So first off, grab it as far down as you can. Just keep maybe heating these up, taking like a propane torch and heating it. Probably come off a lot easier. There, that one's done. I got one left, and they're getting easier. I only have one left. After I figured out how to get them off, look at that. Last one came off easy as I finally figured out the best way to get them off. Today I'm going to clean the gasket surface on the head, and I got these. I think they're lock blocks, they call them. And these aren't actual 3M ones, these are clones. So you don't want to pick off a lot, you're just trying to get rid of all the swirl marks. Three-thousandths of an inch feeler gauge. And we have a machinist straight edge. So you want to try all these different make sure you have it completely feel the air coming out of each one of the bearings. So the bearing, this right here, let me show you. This right here, this hole right here, this is the main oil feed, the oil gallery. And if you put air into there, you can go around and feel each one of these little holes right here, feel air coming out. Air's coming out of the where the tensioner is. So there's also that bearing cap. I got to clean that still. I don't think I've cleaned that. And that goes across here, and that's what that bearing cap goes over here, and that this oil, this oil passage feeds it into the bearing cap, and the bearing cap comes down, and see this right here. See how there's like it's discolored. It's either this one or the other one. It's probably this one, because this shows a little bit of wear, but this one here. There's a channel in the let me go get the cam. So see there's a channel in the cam. See, and there's a hole, and that hole goes all the way through to the other side, and also goes through, if I can get this on camera. See, it's hollow inside there. And then the gear for the intake valve sits on here, and the oil comes out and it goes into the gear, and it fills up chambers, and that advances or retards. I think it advances the oil pressure advances the gear, and when it does that, that changes the timing. You know, I have to admit, this car, back when I was in high school, would have been a really exotic car. I mean, it has dual overhead cams, 4 valves per cylinder, variable valve adjustment, fuel injection, electronic ignition, disc brakes all the way around. It's a Hemi. It's got a Hemi spherical combustion chamber. It's got bucket tappets and rack and pinion steering. What more could you ask for? It doesn't have cruise control. That's the one thing it doesn't have. Or it doesn't have anti-lock brakes. You could get this with anti-lock brakes, but this model didn't have it. I have never installed a valve guide seal on a valve guide while the valve was still installed. I think people do that basically when the cylinder head is still on the block, and they put compressed air into the combustion chamber, and it holds the valve up, and they can remove the spring, and then they take the old seal off, slide the new seal on, put the spring back on, and you know, they're good to go. But I mean, if you got the head off, you got to take the spring out. So, I mean, you got to take the valve out too. So you might as well, you know, and usually I cut new seats, but these look really good, so I don't think I am. So here's the new valve guide seal. So what you want to do is find a socket, preferably a long socket that will fit right on this outer lip right there. So it looks like the 9mm fits the best. And then you can put an extension on this. So then you want to get a small hammer. You don't want a sledgehammer or anything. So I have the guide. So I have the 9mm. I mean, you can use a regular 9mm if you don't have, a long one. It really probably doesn't matter that much, but And then you probably need the extension though. That'd probably really help. Then you go to the first. I don't know if I'm going to put any. I'm going to try it without lube. So how do you know when it's on all the way? We'll have a little mirror, but it won't fit down there. If I can see from the. It doesn't really feel like it's on there. So I can push down. Unless that's the way it's supposed to be. But the spring is. There's a spring on it. It's up right near the top, so that's got to go around. There's like you can see it right around the. So I think it's got to go down a lot more. Yeah, that's on. It feels like it's bottoming out on the. See that little spring? That's like a lock, and it goes. There's like a channel on the top of the valve guide that goes into. You know, I looked, and it looks like the seals go all the way down to the bottom of the base. You know, so. So I'm going to say that they're installed correct. So look, see, it goes all the way down to the bottom of the. All the valve guide seals have been installed. After the 320 emery paper, I used some 600 to make sure there was none of the swirl marks were still there. By looking at the block, this is the back of the engine, and the oil filter's back there. So more than likely, this right here is the oil going to the top end. I looked at the block, and there's like a little hole, and it has like a little brass jet in there or something. Some kind of probably pressure inducing, you know, increases in pressure of the oil to go up to the top end. And then all the rest of these are just for the coolant, the water jacket. This too right here, this may be oil also. Oil going to the top end. And so all these, like I said, are the water cooling jacket, and these, the round ones, I think are the head bolts. You also want to go through every time and recheck with a straight edge. Hello everyone, I'm inside today. It's really hot out today. I'm glad I'm in here. It's real hot and humid. It's really hazy too. I was just out on the freeway, and it's hazy. So I block sanded the rest of the head with 600 grit emery paper, and it's good to go. And so what I'm going to do now is blow out everything really good with some compressed air, and then I'm going to reassemble the valves. I already have the valve guides on. Valve guide seals, I mean. One note while I'm still thinking about it is it's too bad in a way that you can't put the head on and then put the manifold on. I don't think there's enough room because of these studs. So you gotta add this to the width of the manifold. You have to have that much room because you have to bring the manifold in to put it on this. So I don't think there's that much room I don't think there's that much room between the manifold and the firewall. Even when this is installed, there's only like about 3 or 4 inches, so I don't think there's enough room. So I think you do have to install the manifold, the lower manifold, and the head as one unit. Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad, but it just makes it more cumbersome, you know. I mean, anything you can do to reduce, you know, your workload's good, but unfortunately, I don't think that's gonna. I think the manifold's got to go on there with it. I also did the water inlet. That's got to be gone over with like carburetor cleaners. A lot of people use brake cleaner, but I like to use carburetor cleaner. I think it works better. So I'm doing this too. This is the intake. I don't know if I mentioned it before, but this is the oil passage. I think this one right here might be one also, but this one here, if you put compressed air like this, put compressed air in there, you can run your fingers over all the saddle bearings like this. So you can put that's where the oil comes out, that hole right there, and you can feel the air coming out of each one. Now it won't be a lot because this is open. That's where the IVT sensor goes in, and that controls oil. So air is just coming out of there, and of course air is coming out of the end where the cam chain tensioner is. But enough comes out that you put your finger over there to verify that it's not clogged and that there's air coming out. All these right here. And this one, I think this just empties into the chain case. This one here. Okay, that would so this is an oil passage here, and I think this feeds the cap that goes over here. So the oil comes out and it feeds in, comes across here and feeds into the intake camshaft. Also lubes the bearing. And then this probably might be another oil passage here too. So now I'm going to clean off all these washers and reinstall them back in the. I did that one right there, and put them back in the head. I think what I'm going to do is do each washer as I do the valve, because I'm going to be tipping this, so I think they're just going to fall right out, because before they had like a little bit of oil to hold them in there. Now they're dry and they'll just fall out again. So I'm going to do them as I do each valve. Put a spring, valve, the compressor, and then the keepers. Here's the head. It's all ready, and I went over it with some 600 grit and then 1000 grit emery cloth, and block sanded it. And I probably shouldn't have used the green roll-lock. Probably the white one. That's like I think the white one's like 120 or 160, and the green one's like 80 grit. So I think it was too gritty. I wouldn't have had as much prep afterwards to if I'd have used the white. All the valves and the associated parts in plastic bags. So this is one intake A, because there's two valves. There's an A and B. Right? So there's two valves for the intakes, two valves for the exhaust. So that's number one, intake A. Also did the intake. That I did with the white roll lock. Looks a lot better. And I also did the exhaust. Exhaust, you don't have to get it as perfect. Step is to check for cracks. And I've got some CRC crack detect. It's, I think they call it Magnaflux or something like that. The head wasn't warped, so I'm not really sure where the leak was coming from. I think it was the gasket. I'll look at it again. I think I saw on the gasket it might have been leaking. This is the chemicals for the crack detection kit. I just received it in the mail, so I'm going to open that now. So it looks like there's 2 cleaners and a penetrant and a developer and a manual. Who needs a manual, right? So this is the first part. I have the cleaner. You're supposed to clean the whole surface with like a spraying motion, holding it 6 to 12 inches away from the work surface. Stuff that evaporates really fast. So next you're supposed to spray on the penetrant. Sort of smells like creosote. Well, it says that you're supposed to let it dry from 1 to 30 minutes. So I'll give it, it says in the instructions 15 minutes, so I think the instruction book's what I'll follow, so I'll wait 15 minutes. So let's see what time it is now. It's so now it's 4:13. So 15 minutes would be about roughly around 4:28. I mean 2:28. 14:30. $14.19. 14:27. That's close enough because actually I started a little bit before I started recording the time. So now it says to spray some of the cleaner on a rag. There's some areas there where it looks like it's splotched. I may have to do this test again. It says never spray the cleaner on the surface to remove the. You should spray it on a rag. Think I'll find any cracks in this? What do you think? So now spray on the developer. You gotta let the developer shake thoroughly. Spray, burst, clear valve. Spray. Even coat, allow the developing time of 5 to 15 minutes. Then inspect for red lines which mark cracks and red dots which mark pores. So this has a rattle can, so it says before you put it away to make sure to turn it upside down and spray a burst so it clears the nozzle. It's just like a powder. So now I gotta let it sit for 15 minutes. Well, the good news is I don't see any cracks. I mean, I see like some little like dots, but you know, they said that's could be porous. I mean, it could be. I think I'm going to do the test again. I mean, that right there, that could be something. But then again, does it go through to the, I mean, does that just go into the combustion and into the, let's see, which valve is that? I think that's probably like an intake. Does that just leak into the intake, or does it leak into the, you know, into the, I mean, it could just be an imperfection in the, I guess I'd have to see like someone, I'll see if there's more of these tests online to see if, yeah, I think these are just like imperfections. You know, it's kind of a rough area. It's not machined like the cylinder head. So it's like a little pocket of it's like a little pocket of the red, the not developer, but the penetrant. Didn't that one have one a spark plug? What else? There's no one that had a spark plug. Guess not. It's kind of weird though the way a few of these have like red around the outside of the water jacket. Is that where the leak was coming from? That's pretty strange. I don't see any down in the, well, I cleaned everything off again. So I'm going to try a third test. and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to do the whole thing over again just to make sure. So I'm going to spray on the, I already cleaned it off and used the cleaner that they have. Now I'm going to do the penetrant. This kind of worries me. In the same place, it keeps forming these. I don't know if the stuff's sinking in there. I mean, when I put the developer on there, it doesn't show that that's, you know, I think it's just something that's not adhering to it for some reason. I have to clean it again, maybe just do that area again, clean it really good, clean it really thoroughly. It's not quite as big as it was the last time. See, there's another one there. I don't think there was one the last time. So I have about 10 more minutes before I can clean it off. I've got a few of those places like that where it's just not. I wonder if that's porous and it's just sinking in. I have to compare these pictures with the other ones I took and see if they're in the same place. I mean, what it really kind of looks like is that there's something in there like oil or something. Because if it was sinking in, when I put the developer on there, it would show, wouldn't it? And something too about it being porous is, you know, I don't think it can all of a sudden develop being porous. I think, I mean, it could, I guess, but I would think that it would be porous from the day it was made. You know, so you know, if that's porous, it would have done it. It would have started leaking coolant the day that it was, you know, after it was bought and driven. I don't think it can like develop being porous. Maybe it can. I don't know. Aluminum can crystallize, I think. So I guess it could. I've cleaned all the penetrant off, and now I'm going to let it dry for a while. It's been about 20 minutes since I sprayed the developer on. And like all the coolant passages, what I think's happened with those is that, you know, when I sprayed the penetrant down, it was in the recesses, you know, and when I cleaned it all off, I should have cleaned in the recesses, and what it does is it just wicks it up from there, and it, you know, wicks it right around the 90-degree corner, and that's all stuff that was down inside the passages there. But you know, that area where it wasn't shine, I mean, there's nothing, you know, where it was beating up, or not beating up, but disappearing like. And that's so bizarre. I mean, it looks good. I think I don't really see anything that's a crack. I mean, this, you know, this is the first time I've used something like this, so I mean, I don't have the experience, but I would think that just from watching YouTube videos, I mean, that could be, you know, it's porous. I just can't see how porous. I would think it would always be there, you know, from the time that the head was cast, you know. Maybe it wasn't, you know, after driving it for 150,000 miles or whatever, you know, the gasket, I don't know, it shrinks, or well, it's metal, so it wouldn't shrink, but I don't know, it's not compressed the same, and then it starts leaking. So as long as the gasket's new, it may not leak, you know. It just takes time. I cleaned the area really good where the penetrant was, you know, was parting. It was forming looked like sinkholes, and I just cleaned it really good. I think that's what was wrong. It wasn't cleaned thoroughly. where I had that. So it was right there above the, that's I guess one of the bolt holes. And it was right above that where it was the penetrant was parting and leaving an open circle. And now it's not doing that. So cleaning is a good, it's a process that you need to do. You make sure it's really clean. Might have to do this like I did a couple times to get good results. This is a bearing cap that goes on the end of the cylinder head where the two gears for the chain drive, the high-vo chain. And so I think it's fed by the oil gallery from the IVT, which also lubes the bearings. And basically, this is why you should pay attention to the bolts that you take out. And there's two sets of bolts for this. There's one bolt right here that has a high shoulder, and then there's another bolt that's just sort of like a normal bolt. So what happens is, I'm pretty sure that both the bolts with the high shoulder, so there's 4 places. There's here, there's here, there's here, and there's here. And this is too is for it's like a rubber chain guard that goes on the top here. So don't confuse these two here. So I think this bolt with the high shoulder, I think there's 2 of them, and I think they go in the middle. In fact, I looked in the parts manual, and it's kind of iffy. But the one bolt that they had drawn, it looked like this, and it went into one of these holes. It was like this with a dotted line down to it, and it said ×2. So I would assume you put both the shoulder bolts in this, and then what happens is if you put the shoulder bolt, if you put it in this one like this, you know what? It's going to cut off the oil flow. It's not going to cut it off completely, but it's not much is going to get through. So you just ruined your top end. So unless there's another way it's getting oil, this could be just for the IVT. It could be another bearing oil, another bearing oil source. I'll have to look at that when I get back to putting the valves in. I'll take a look at that and I'll report back on that. So if you put in this other regular bolt, then you got plenty of room for the oil to go around the bolt. So I just thought I'd bring that little fact to light in case you when you get to this point. I think all the well, no, I'm not going to say that. I think it's just the GXEs that might have this. Here's that bearing cap installed that I was talking about. And I think this is how it works, is that see, these two aren't really in line. And this one is solely for the IVT, because where this comes out, it comes out onto this, on the bearing saddle right here. And right on the camshaft, that's where I showed you that groove was. See, in this one, the other one right here, see, this comes up to here. And that goes to this. This feeds the bearing. This is what lubes the bearing. It lubes the bearing on both these. So oil comes out of here. And if you put that shoulder bolt in there, you'd have cut off all your oil going to your bearings. And so this one is completely separate. This is a completely separate circuit. This one's just for the IVT here. And that's this one here. See how they're staggered? This one's over here, and this one's here. And this one lines up with the cutout in the camshaft, which has the IVT for the gear that can the oil pressure causes the gear to advance. So and that's the intake gear. So that's the IVT circuit, this right here, just to recap. And then this is for your bearing lube for both camshafts. And that comes out of here. The bearing lube comes out of here, and the IVT comes right out of here. And then you have your IVT sensor right here. So that's what allows the oil to come out of here. It commands it. The ECM commands this to open because it's a solenoid. It's right here. See, it's the IVT. Put a new O-ring on it. Also put a new O-ring on this too. This is one of the sensors for the cam. It isn't quite as wide. Come on, camera, focus. It isn't quite as wide. I may have to put 2 O-rings on it, but I'll start out with 1, see how it does. The other one's completely smashed flat, and it was leaking oil like a sieve. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the video backwards after I put the head on, and I'm going to watch it backwards from taking it off and step it backwards and see what the sequence is of what I need to connect, and I'll publish that. So tomorrow we put the valves in. Valve guide seals are all in. I should probably put those in. The checking for a crack was sort of like an afterthought. I should have done that first and then put the valve guide seals on. But I don't think the cleaner or any of the other stuff. I'm going to clean out each one of the valve guides with a Q-tip just to make sure that there's no residue in there. But tomorrow we put the valves back in. Then the head goes back on. Well, welcome back. We're on the final leg of this odyssey. We're going to put the valves in, and that's probably pretty much everything for this segment. And something always puzzled me on this. I thought it was like a scratch or something. I mean, it actually looks like somebody used a Dremel tool, because you can see like the right there and there and there, like they put a Dremel tool down. It looks like they made a 3. If you look at it from the other side, it looks more like a 3 than from here. But I mean, that's kind of weird. And, I mean, there's other kinds of marks on here. Maybe that was some kind of inspection mark. So there's a 4 and a T and an X. Maybe that was some inspector, but he did it right on the valve guide. I mean, the valve cover seal. That theoretically that could leak. So I have a little bit of 30 weight in the bottom of this, and a paintbrush. I'm going to put a little bit of oil on the valve stem as I assemble them. So it goes valve, then a washer, and all my tools inadvertently or on purpose become magnetized. The ferrous metal tools. So I went and I brought this down, and some people may recognize these and some people may not. It's called a twiddler pot. And back in the old days of CRT TVs and mainframe computers, there was these little tiny potentiometers on circuit boards, and you had to hook up oscilloscopes, and you had to turn. They were either capacitors or potentiometers, even some inductors, and you had to adjust them to. You had a book that had a frequency, a waveform, and you had to adjust it to that waveform. So this is plastic, and I'm going to use this to push this around, because I have some other tools, but what happens is we're lifting these out with a magnet. It slightly magnetizes the washer. So we have the valve, the washer. Then we need a spring. Then we need the keeper, and then we need to get the valve spring compressor. So just think of this as like a special purpose C-clamp. It's got a handle at the top, and you just turn this clockwise to turn it down. And we're going to make sure that you have to make sure the other end is on the valve face. So the other end has to look like this, has to be on the valve face. You don't want it on the combustion chamber. And you certainly don't want it on the gasket surface. So then you got to find some way to get the collets in. You got to get the collets in right on top of the... See, I dropped it right in there. Now, so put the other collet in on the other side. See how there's a ridge? See how there's a ridge right there? That ridge gets locked into, and this is tapered too. And this goes to the top, and that gets locked into the valve. And just as the spring comes up, as you're releasing it, it pushes up against that, and it holds that the keeper in place. I only have this one side, so what I'm going to have to do is so there's the collet right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the plastic tool and try to slide the collet around the other side and then drop the other one in right where that one is. So what I did is I loosened up a bit on the mechanism that's pressing down on the collet, and then I just held on to tightened it up again. I held on to this bottom part so the window would stay in the one position, and you can see the one collet and the other collet. You can just barely see it around on the other side there. And hopefully when I release this, it should be enough for it to capture it. It is on the other side, but I think that this one was too much of an angle and it's pushing up. Wait a minute. Yep, there it goes. So that's how it's done. We have the valve, the washer, the spring, and the collet. So either the collet has become magnetized or the forceps or both. So what you have to do is you have to use the forceps to put them down in there, or tweezers, or a long needle nose. And then you have to hold this while you hold this down while you retract it, because if you just try to retract it, it's going to stick to the end of the forceps. Having something with plastic works great getting the collets lined up. There's one there, and the other one is... it's right there. So here's the other one. You can just see it around the edge right there. Hopefully it don't try to overlap. Oh, the one's it's riding up too high. I don't know, maybe not. There it goes. So there they are, the first two valves installed. And you never want to lose any of the collets. You should have 32 collets. I guess, it's one of those things that, they may have a lot of them at a Nissan dealership, or they may not have any because no one ever loses them. So, or it could be something that everybody loses, and it's a small part, so they might have, a whole lot of them. They probably charge you like $5 for one of them. So there's another valve stem sticking up right there. Placing a collet in the back. It's magnetic, it's sticking to it. Oh, that's perfect. I have to drop one in the front. Yeah, it should be good. Oh, it fell back. That's not good. Oh, they're overlapping, I think. Oh, there we go. Let's try it again. Oh, it's pushing it up. This one's going to be this one's going to be a little difficult. This one wants to be difficult. Let's try this one again. No. So now we're going to try this. What I'm going to try to do is tighten it down a little bit more, see if it will drop down. I think that's the key. I think it wasn't tightened enough. You know, that's possibly the key, is to make sure you have the valve spring pressed down enough. One thing I think you have to do is you might have to pull back on the handle, when you're tightening it down, to make sure that you get the equal distance around the valve stem for the collet, so that the keeper, so that the collets drop in. I think that may be really important. What you may have to do is to get like an opening. You know, the space around the valve stem should be concentric, and you may have to pull on or push on the tool to slide the spring and the collet around to give you some space to put a. It's kind of hard to do this with one hand, but you can pull on this part of the tool. You know, pull on it towards you or push it away, and you can actually increase or decrease that space, so you can put a collet in there. That actually looks pretty good. All the intake valves have been installed. I have 4 more exhaust valves left. The cylinder head's back together. All the valves are in. All I have to do is put the bucket tappets in, and it's the end of part 2, and then we'll start the beginning of part 3, which is putting the motor back together. I'm kind of toying with the idea of taking the cylinder head out and attaching it to the engine support, and then once I do that, then put on the lower intake manifold. All the bucket tappets have been installed, and this is the final stage.